hit, you are authorized to fire at will.
Good Sunday afternoon, everyone. I would apologize in advance for the delay in getting this out. I know I said it was going to be on Saturday. Research, digging, investigating took some delays. And then I was kind of landlocked yesterday, for lack of better terminology, with weather. Couldn't get out and get any of the chores done that I needed to do. Between the bouts of intense rain that we had, so I didn't get any of the two-day weekend stuff that normal people have to deal with. Oh man, guys, my hat's not straight. There, now we're better. Yeah. Anyway, didn't get any of that stuff done, so I had to eke that out today. And in the middle of doing that, I was doing some research into this story. Jugs says you can't rush good work. You know what, Jugs, thanks, I appreciate that. And Sarah, hey everyone. Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it. Hope everyone's sharing this out. While I'm waiting for just a little bit more audience build in anticipation, make sure that you are hitting that like button on the video. Drive that up in the algorithm. Actually, believe it or not, if you hit the dislike button, I don't like that as much, but for some reason it triggers hate watchers to come in. I don't know why, but it does. So, but likes definitely drive me further up in the algorithm. And if you're not subscribed, do so, because we, here at the Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Podcast, MBRR Pod, we being me, we need all the help in the algorithm that we can get. And while we're once again waiting, if you look at the community tab, or down below, there should be a little button that says join. Jugs is a member of the channel. He is an ACT localist. Sarah is an ACT localist through Subscribestar. So at least the last time I looked, we'll check on that, Sarah. But find a level of support. I'm still looking for a show producer, someone who wants to step up and take show producer credits. That's the top level of support here on YouTube, or through Subscribestar. And if you do show producer level, you get credit in every stream and every video that I put out outside of shorts. So, as many of you know, I have been covering the stories of law enforcement corruption for several years. And in the process of covering those stories, as well as covering stories of accountability for public servants, whether they be elected or appointed, whether they be school districts or cities or counties or state level, my focus over the last couple of years in particular has been on, in particular, law enforcement. And one of the reasons that is because they are an in-your-face, very prominent, should we say, segment of society that you're more than likely going to see far more often than anyone else. Chances are you're going to see your county deputies far more than you would know any of your county employees. And you're not going to the county treasurer's office or the county clerk's office very often. Hopefully you're not going to your county court's office very often. You're probably not dealing with your city staff on a regular basis. You probably, if you see anybody from your city staff at all, it might be your streets department or your park and rec department, but not to the same level that you see law enforcement. And another aspect of that is that law enforcement is the enforcement arm, i.e., enforcement, law enforcement, policy enforcement, policing, state patrol, state troopers. They're patrolling, not for the purpose of enforcing that you just see them more. You interact with them more. They have the power of the state. They have the power and the authority and a monopoly on force, a monopoly on violence to step in and extract from you a penalty, more often than not, a financial remuneration that is meant. It's a penalty, right? It's to penalize you. It's punitive. It's meant to hurt when you fail to follow the laws, the codes, the statutes of your neighborhood, of your city, of your county, of your state, or even at the federal level. Those things are in place for a reason, and there have to be armed men and women with guns and badges and other tools and equipment meant to force your compliance. Now, a lot of people will say things along the lines of, just follow the rules, follow the laws, and you don't have anything to worry about, right? And to some degree, that's true. And but by and large, it is a misconception that laws are applied equally, not just in broader society. So, I mean, honestly, we all know that one person who might have the connections, who can get whatever permit they want, who can get away with doing pretty much anything. The person who's going to get a slap on the wrist and sent home, who isn't in law enforcement. But we also know that law enforcement, and not in every case, not in every state, not every jurisdiction, but here in Minnesota, there's a lot of talk about how we don't support our law enforcement. We hear that constantly from the normie cons. We hear it constantly from the Minnesota GOP that law enforcement's not supported, that the defund the police movement in Minnesota has destroyed police support, has destroyed the ability of police to do their jobs. And people are leaving in droves from the law enforcement world. But is that true? And do police not have any support? And I would say their support is waning in Minnesota, and it's actually beginning to wane in people who considered themselves, and this is becoming a truism across the United States. It's waning in a lot of people who would consider themselves, once considered themselves, back the blue at all costs. Now, it's not nearly enough. I know that probably sounds hateful to some of you, but the reality, the truth, is that more people need to adapt or adopt the mentality that I promote here, which is you do not approach cops from a supportive position. You support cops from a neutral position. You support cops from the perspective that they need to prove their reliability to you, that they need to prove that they are indeed there to protect and serve. And a lot of people have shifted from back the blue at all costs to all cops are bastards, which I think is an equally dangerous position because it plays into the narrative where we have to approach everybody from a position of hating them if they don't agree with us, or if we don't agree with their perspective. And no place does that play out more than within political philosophy. And that, unfortunately, is bleeding into how we approach public servants. And, I'll give you an example. Conservative types, the GOP types, will talk all sorts of smack about teachers. Teachers are, they're all just, leftist hacks, and they're all terrible people, and their unions are crooked, and their unions are dirty, and their unions are pushing this leftist ideology and this leftist agenda. But cops, on the other hand, we view all cops as probably conservative law and order types, ironically, or maybe not ironically. And their unions are good and their unions are powerful for a reason, is to protect them. Now, I will tell you, having had to rely on a law enforcement union when I was fighting for my career, I'm glad I had what I had in place, because if I didn't, we would not have had the opportunity to force the sheriff's office into a settlement because the sheriff was wrong. And if I was a fire at will or hire at will person under those circumstances, he wouldn't have had to prove any wrongdoing on my part. He could have just said, we're going to get rid of him because we don't like his politics. But because I had a good union, I had a good union rep, good union attorney, they were forced to cave. And so what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're one of those people that's going to support strong unions for police because you support police and you think police should have those protections, then you don't get to level accusations against strong unions for other government employees. Now, maybe we should be having a conversation about disbanding unions for all government or public sector employees. All, not just the ones we don't like, but all of them. Maybe that's a conversation we can have in the future, but that's not a conversation we're going to have right now. My point in bringing that up is the hypocrisy on both sides. You have one side that backs teachers at all costs and wants their unions to do everything to protect them, no matter how bad the teacher is. You have the other side that wants to back cops at all costs and wants their unions to do whatever it needs or whatever needs doing to support them and protect them. And I see this play out constantly as I've, have, especially since I've been focusing on Trooper Shane Roper of the Minnesota State Patrol, and the fact that he is still free, still hasn't been arraigned, still doesn't have a bond, still doesn't have any restrictions on his life. I'm sure he probably got some sort of "don't try and leave the state" lecture, which means nothing. But his union is protecting him and keeping him paid while he's on paid administrative leave after murdering Olivia Flores. We know that in Candy-Ojai County, Deputy Christopher Flatten, while he was Officer Christopher Flatten for the Wilmer Police Department, he and 6 other guys beat the brakes off of Derek Gilbert and wrongfully imprisoned him. He kept his job, suffered no actual penalty, no financial struggles at all for him. And then shortly before the civil suit was filed, he magically found himself employed by Candy-Ojai County Sheriff Eric Tollefson. And one can only wonder or speculate if maybe there was a move to get him away from Wilmer to take some of the heat off of Wilmer, but to still keep him employed in an area with people who, by the way, took part in helping him beat the brakes off of Derek Gilbert. He still got a new job to only within a few months go out and wreck a cruiser while he was drunk on duty and then refused to comply with even a warrant while he was drunk on duty and wrecked a squad, and is now being charged. And rumor has it he's not going to have a job here pretty soon. Finally, right? Finally, he's not going to have a job. But Eric Tollefson, the sheriff over there in Candy-Ojai County, still hasn't released a public statement about the incident other than the initial report of the accident that the evening that it happened. So in my research into Flatten and Candy-Ojai, I come in contact with other people over there, as I have now mentioned numerous times. And these people have advised me of multiple cases of law enforcement malfeasance, unlawful searches and seizures, not Caesar. I was out in the sun all day, folks. I was doing my illegal chicken duties and other yard maintenance. But these individuals, and it's more than one actually, have made me aware. And now another story has fallen into my lap about Deputy Roger William Muffley. Yes, Roger William Muffley. My chickens are going nuts. It's throwing me off. You have to bear with me. So Mr. Muffley, Roger, on, let's see, what's the date here? Bear with me. On February 4th of 2024 at approximately 2 a.m., Deputy Muffley, who was off duty, was pulled over after a Kandiyohi County deputy. Yeah, you catch that? Deputy Muffley of Meeker County, Minnesota, was off duty at 2 a.m. in the morning, was pulled over after a Kandiyohi County deputy observed Muffley's vehicle make a wide turn, cross over the fog line. Some of you don't understand. Fog line is the white line on the side of the road instead of the center lines. The fog line several times and weave within its lane. The responding deputy observed a strong odor of alcohol coming from inside the vehicle. That Muffley had bloodshot eyes, watery eyes, and slurred speech. Kind of like me. Muffley admitted that he had consumed approximately, and this is so much BS, approximately 6 beers between 5:30 p.m. and 2 a.m. at a local bar. Now, any of you know anything about beer, 5:30 p.m. to 2 a.m., 6 beers, you're dealing with 6.5 hours from 5:30 to midnight, right? 6.5 hours. Then another 2 hours. So 8.5 hours. This guy drank. How many did we say here? Approximately 6 beers. 6 beers in 8.5 hours. At a bar. Muffley performed field sobriety test and knew he was showing signs of intoxication. So that's a on-scene admittance. As such, he asked the deputy to move on to the preliminary breath test to avoid the need for the deputy to provide additional tests. So Deputy Muffley requested that the Kandiyohi deputy, who was unnamed, just go from the PBT go to the PBT after one attempt at a field sobriety test. Muffley failed the preliminary breath test, was placed under arrest, and transported to the Kandiyohi County Jail. Muffley provided a final breath test reading of 0.15. Folks, the legal limit in Minnesota is 0.079. 0.079. In other words, at 0.08, you're legally intoxicated. You're not allowed to drive. He tested at 0.015. 0.015. Nearly double the legal limit in the state of Minnesota. I'm just gonna bring this document up so you guys can see it. Maybe I'm going to bring that up and try it again. There we go. There we go. Hey, Brandon, good to see you. So, This is key. So while they were securing Muffley in the squad car after the arrest, that same deputy from Kandiyohi County discovered a holstered Glock 43 pistol on the driver's side floor of the vehicle below where Muffley had been seated. Muffley denied that he had been carrying the pistol and explained he took it off at approximately 7:30 p.m. after he started drinking. Muffley self-reported his arrest to the board, which is the Minnesota Post Police Officer Standards and Testing Board. It's people who are responsible for ensuring that Minnesota law enforcement officers are post certified. Now, Muffley also had a minor in the vehicle with him at the time. Now, in some circumstances in Minnesota, having a minor in your vehicle is an exacerbating charge. If that minor is 16 or 15 and younger, or under the age of 16 in the state of Minnesota, and there's certain parameters for how old that person or how many months difference there have to be. Now, this minor was 16. So Muffley didn't get charged or didn't get an exacerbating or aggravating charge on his case. But he did have a firearm on him. In the state of Minnesota, having a firearm in your possession, whether you're driving or not, but having a firearm in your possession while you're under the influence of alcohol is a prohibited act. And that falls under Minnesota state statute. There we go. Carrying while under influence of alcohol or controlled substance. This is state statute 624.7142. Subdivision 1, acts prohibited. A person may not carry a pistol on or about the person's clothes or person in a public place when the person is under the influence of a controlled substance as defined in section yada yada yada. When the person is under the influence of a combination of any of two or more of the elements named in clauses 4 and 7. When the person is under the influence of an intoxicating substance as defined in such and such a section. And the person knows or has reason to know that the substance has the capacity to cause impairment. When the person is under the influence of alcohol. When the person's alcohol concentration is 0.10 or more, or when the person's blood concentration is less than 0.10 but more than 0.04, or when the person is under the influence of cannabis and yada, yada, yada. A police officer may arrest a person for violation under subdivision 1 without a warrant upon probable cause without regard to whether the violation was committed in the officer's presence. When an officer authorized under subdivision 2 to make arrest has reason to believe the person may be violating or has violated subdivision 1, the officer may require the person to provide a breath sample for a preliminary screening test using a device approved by the commissioner for this purpose. Now, the in the public place part might seem like I'm hung up on something here, but what you're dealing with, folks, is you're dealing with an off-duty deputy who started drinking at 5:30 in the evening at a bar in a public place, left that weapon on his person for 2 hours. 2 hours. In a bar. Everybody knows that there's no way in the world that everybody in that place did not know he's a deputy. And he left that weapon on his person for 2 hours while he was consuming alcohol before he finally wised up after 2 hours and took it off. But then, and here's the kicker, In Minnesota, if you're a licensed peace officer, you don't need to have a permit to carry a firearm. You don't even have to have a permit to purchase a firearm if you're a licensed peace officer. You just basically, and we can have a conversation about permits to purchase and on and on and on. But if he wants to, all he has to do is walk up and show his law enforcement license and he can buy a firearm. He can carry that firearm that he buys anywhere that he wants to go. In Minnesota, you're required, if you want to carry a firearm in public, whether it be concealed or not, you have to have a permit to carry. And that permit to carry, the guidelines for that permit to carry are you do not consume any alcohol at all while you have your firearm on you. So let's look this up. Come on, computer. It's running slow. We'll let that find it. So this deputy off duty gets drunk in a bar from 5:30 to 2 a.m., has a minor with them from 5:30 to 2 a.m., has a firearm on his person from 5:30 to 7:30, puts the firearm in his vehicle under his seat, leaves the bar. Leaves the bar and then begins to drive under the influence and gets pulled over and has the minor in the car, has the firearm in the car, and is more than twice the legal limit, or basically twice the legal limit in Minnesota. And you're like, okay, what's the big deal, TC? Muffley got arrested. You're right, he did get arrested. Guess what I can't get any information on, by the way? I cannot get any information on his arrest. I called the Candy Ojai Sheriff's Office just to get a mugshot yesterday, and they wouldn't release it to me. I have to call back during normal business hours during the week, which is hogwash. And just imagine that I'm trying to cover a hot off the presses story. If I'm mainstream media, and I need a mugshot, you think they're going to tell a reporter from KSTP or anything like that, I'm sorry, we can't do that, or WCCO? No, they'll comply with that request. Excuse me. So he does report himself to the post standards, right? And so well, you know what? Let's take a look at his case here, okay? Now I want you guys to note something, because I don't think anybody else would have gotten away with this. Okay, good. You can see that. This is case number 34-CR-24-121, State of Minnesota versus Roger William Muffley. Crime, traffic, mandatory. Case location, Candy Ojai County. Case status, under court jurisdiction. Citation number, yada, yada, yada. First offense, DWI, 4th degree, driving while impaired. Described. Disposition, convicted. Level of sentence, convicted of a misdemeanor. Charge 2. Traffic, DWI, operate motor vehicle, alcohol concentration of 0.08 within 2 hours. Dismissed. Charge 3, failure to dismiss or failure to drive in a single lane. Dismissed. So more than likely he pled guilty to the first charge. Now let's take a look at these case details. So the offense date was 2/4/2024. It was filed, you can see it right here, it was filed on 2/20/2024. He was ordered to appear in court on 3/21/2024. So he went from February 4th of 2024 to March 21st of 2024 before he appeared and was convicted. Now, if you look here, citation was e-filed on 2/20/2024. How on earth? You can say what you want with me, or think what you want. Take issue with me all you want. But Mr. Muffley got caught on February 4th of 2024. The citation wasn't filed until 2/20/2024. The petition to enter a guilty plea was filed on 3/5. And it appears to have been dealt with on 3/11. And then sentencing took place on 3/11/2024 as well. And then there you see this note here that says, I'm sorry, I'm irritated by this and it's kind of throwing me off. He had what appears to be the remaining portion of fees and fines sent to collections on 7/9/2024. So here's his conviction. Convicted, level of sentence, convicted of misdemeanor. Level of charge, misdemeanor. Offense date, 2/4/2024. Law enforcement agency, Kaneohe County Sheriff's Office. Prosecuting agency, Kaneohe County Attorney. Local confinement. Agency, Kaneohe County Jail for confinement. Term, 90 days. Stay, 90 days. So he's got to do 90 days in jail, but the judge is staying that for 90 days. The defendant may do CSW for fines. That's community service work. Fines total for grand total of $620. Fines $500. Library fees $15. County and sheriff and felony fees $500. Crime and traffic surcharge $75. Chemical dependency assessment is $30. Monitoring adult type supervised probation and Kaneohe County probation term of 1 year from 3/11 to 3/11/2024 to 3/11/2025. Attend MAD impact panel. Show proof of MAD panel within 6 months to probation officer. Complete comprehensive assessment, obtain comprehensive use assessment within 60 days of this order, must follow all recommendations, remain law-abiding, contact probation within 48 hours of receiving sentencing order, follow all instructions of probation. So now his fees have all been turned over for collection. He's paid $300 and $320 are outstanding for collections. But he doesn't have to do any time in jail for a year, as long as he remains law-abiding. Now, let's think about this for just a second. You would think that with being on probation and being a law enforcement officer are not conducive to one another, correct? So you've got to be asking yourselves right now, obviously, Mr. Muffley is no longer Deputy Muffley, right? Mr. Muffley must not have his job. There's no way that Mr. Muffley kept his job. There's no way that Mr. Muffley kept his certification to be a law enforcement officer in the state of Minnesota. And I'm telling you, because I said these things to myself, that just can't be. There's no way he kept his job. And you would, if those are your views, your thoughts, you would be like me. You'd be wrong. If those of you that are just tuning in, please make sure you're sharing this out. I want this to go so bold, so big. I want Meeker County to be embarrassed by this because they deserve to be embarrassed by this. So here we go, folks. Are you ready for this? Conclusion of law. So this is the Minnesota Peace Officer Standards and Testing. Conclusion of law. The board has authority to license and regulate peace officers and to take disciplinary action as appropriate, according to Minnesota statutes, yada, yada, yada. Muffley's driving and carrying a pistol under the influence of alcohol subjects him to discipline pursuant to yada, yada, yada statutes. The stipulation and consent order is in the public interest. The stipulation and consent order must be approved by the board to become effective. Muffley agrees that committee may move the board with or without advance notice to Muffley to approve the stipulation and consent order. Muffley understands that the board may either approve the stipulation and consent order or not approve it. This stipulation and the file records and proceedings associated with this matter may be reviewed by the board in its consideration of the committee's motion. If approved by the board, the stipulation and consent order shall constitute disciplinary action against Muffley and be classified as public data. So all of this is the legal mumbo jumbo, right? And here we see that he signed this. Muffley signed this. On 7/12/2024. So just last month, in the middle of the month. So, what was his discipline? Are you ready? A. Muffley's peace officer license is censured. Censured. But that's not all. Muffley's peace officer license is suspended for 120 days. However, 117 days of that suspension are stayed for 3 years on condition that he comply with the stipulation and consent order. Muffley shall serve the 3-day suspension on consecutive days starting July 27th, 2024. If the board determines that Muffley has not complied with the stipulation and consent order, the stay on the suspension shall be lifted, in addition to any other penalty the board deems appropriate for any new violations. In the event the board seeks to lift the stay of the suspension, Muffley may request a hearing to challenge, and this goes on and on and on and on and on. Mr. Muffley violated the very laws that I guarantee you he's probably, or not guaranteed, probably, I guarantee you he's enforced on other people. Guarantee you he's mailed it to other, or mailed it, enforced this on other people. I was reading comments and the word mailed, emailed showed up. And he gets a censure and 120-day suspension of his license, but only 3 of those days are actually suspended. He gets to serve those at the end of July, and he kept his job. He kept his job, folks. And you're sitting here saying, ain't no way he kept his job. Mr. Muffley, as far as we can tell, has not been terminated. He's still showing active. You see him right there. Roger William Muffley, post license number 28167, gender male, post license 28167, peace officer, status active, expiration 6/30/2026, original issue date 7/3/2023, Meeker County Sheriff's Office, employment type primary, chief law enforcement officer, no. 1 post disciplinary action. Effective date 7/25/2024. Disciplinary case PB 24077. Expiration date 7/25/2027. Mr. Muffley appears to still be employed by the Meeker County Sheriff's Office. That's the most recent document that we can find as it regards Mr. Muffley. And that was from just 2 days ago. It's showing he's still employed by Meeker County. So if Meeker County has terminated Mr. Muffley, we don't have any indication that happened. And because it would show him as not being employed there, if that was an update. And why would they terminate him? They just put him out on paid administrative leave for the time of his suspension, and then he gets this little slap on the wrist. And look, people make mistakes, folks, but Sheriff Brian Cruz of Meeker County clearly is protecting this individual. And the reason that I know he's being protected is because I'll be damned if I can find a newspaper article or even a crime reporting section of the newspaper anywhere in Meeker County or Kandiyohi County that shows that this guy was even arrested for a DUI. You tell me how that's justice. You tell me how that's right. Now, when I initially heard that he had a minor in the vehicle, I wanted to make a big deal out of it. I really did. I had just this, like, what in the hell? But according to Minnesota law, he didn't break any additional laws having the minor in his vehicle. But what I do not understand is that He had his firearm, admitted to being under the influence of alcohol with his firearm on him. His firearm was found to be in his care, custody, and control while he was driving. And people, just so you understand, care, custody, and control means it was in his possession on a public roadway. And we could sit here and we can hash this out to some degree. Is your car private property or is it public? Well, we know your car is private property, just like your person is private. So when if you're walking down the road and you have your firearm on you and you're under the influence, you don't get to say, well, I'm private person. Just like driving down the car or down the road in your car and having your firearm on you while you're under the influence is you being in a public place under the influence with a firearm. Not a charge. Not one charge. And he was clearly in violation of that law. This should have been a career-ending situation, but the deputy on scene and the prosecuting attorney in Kandiyohi County chose not to charge that, even though he admitted to having the firearm on him at one point for 2 hours while he was under the influence of alcohol. He admitted it. Look, people, if anybody knows to not talk to cops, it should be cops. But this cop opened his mouth and spoke to cops, admitted it, and it made it into the report that we were reading. And nothing was done about it. It wasn't even a charge to be dismissed. And the reason there was no reason for it to be dismissed was because it was never brought forward. So how on earth can we look at this and say that this guy's not being protected? If you can find any newspaper article on this, if you're watching this and if you're a newspaper outlet and you wrote an article about this, if you're a newspaper outlet or a media outlet of any form or any shape or any size in Meeker County or anywhere around there, and you can show me that you reported any of the facts of this case, that this was a deputy who was caught drunk driving, if you could show me that, I'll do a retraction. Anybody who knows me knows I'll do a retraction, but I cannot find a report. I literally tried everything. I tried Muffley arrested for DWI, Deputy Muffley arrested for DWI, Meeker County deputy arrested for DWI. Nothing about Muffley came up. Not a word. And when I tell you I got people that are looking at this just because I want to make sure I'm getting my story straight, the people that I have looking at this cannot find a single newspaper report on this or a media outlet report on this. You and I both know that average media outlets report especially in small counties, will report every single crime that people have been arrested for. I can't find a single report of Muffley being arrested in any media outlet. This should have been a front page story. Where is the local media covering a story about a deputy in their county getting busted in another county, one county over, under the influence, almost twice the legal limit, with a minor in the car and their firearm on them? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry would have come out of the woods to cry about, how this is why people shouldn't have guns. If that had been just a regular guy on the street. But not in this case. It's mind-boggling to me. It literally blows my mind that this kid, I mean, he's not a kid, he's 33, but this guy is walking around with his post certification in the state of Minnesota, hasn't lost his job yet. And I want to show you this. You guys can see this picture in the thumbnail, but I want to show you his. This is him, folks. This is the guy. He deserves to be embarrassed. I mean, this guy deserves to be embarrassed. I just moved to Minnesota from Texas, and I'm loving it. Going to school for law enforcement. And that was back several years ago. He hasn't been on his Twitter and his X for quite some time. But I want to tell you guys a little something here about this too, and this is something else I'm digging into, and so there'll probably be another story if we can find it. Muffley holds an active peace officer license in the state of Minnesota. After beginning his law enforcement career in Texas, Muffley was appointed as a police officer with the Meeker County Sheriff's Office on July 3rd, 2023. So he came to Minnesota, went to law enforcement school, more than likely through a local community college, did his skills and training and all of that through local community college. Minnesota is not an academy state. Minnesota is a college education, a criminal justice degree state. So he moves to Minnesota, does criminal justice degree, moves to Texas and begins his law enforcement career, then moves back to Minnesota into Meeker County and starts his career on July 3rd of 2023. I have friends in Texas who are digging into this for me, and right now they cannot find any information about where he worked or what the conditions of his employment were like. So when we find out, if we can find out where he was working, and one of my friends is former law enforcement in Texas, he said from the looks of the guy, he's probably a small town cop from Texas. So he's probably a constable or city cop, maybe a county deputy, small jurisdiction. We're going to find out if he had complaints. We're going to find out where he was working. We're going to put everything we can into it. I can't afford to do the pay to find out stuff. But we're going to find out where in Texas he was working. And we're going to dig into his history. We're going to find out if he had problems down there. And heaven forbid we find out he had a habit of driving around with underage people in his car while he was under the influence of alcohol. Because if we can find that out, we'll let you know. Folks, you can get mad at me all you want and say that I have it out for law enforcement. No, I have it out for corruption, and this is what corruption looks like. See, so many of you want to look at corruption and you want to think about corruption from the perspective that it's people taking money under the table to turn a blind eye to the mob or towards organized crime of some sort, or you want to think of corruption as a cop planting drugs on somebody, and all of those things are corruption. Those things are all bad. But the worst form of corruption is what law enforcement does for itself and lets itself get away with. The worst form of corruption is the silence in the blue community. If I was a deputy in Meeker County and I had to work alongside this douchebag, as one of the good ones, I would be mocking his fat ass to the point that he was in tears every day. I would make his life such a living hell. I would follow him around on duty every day, running radar on him, pulling him over for every traffic violation I saw. I would hound him out. And if they came after me for doing it, I would go public with why I was doing it. I'm not even kidding. That's what a good cop would do. So if I'm wrong, and this fat, filthy, greasy-looking sleazeball was fired, then I won't feel bad for calling him a fat, goofy-looking, greasy sleazeball. I won't feel guilty for that. But if he hasn't been fired, not only is he still a fat, goofy, greasy sleazeball, but he's a protected, fat, goofy, greasy sleazeball who the Sheriff Cruz of Meeker County, has some explaining to do. Why would you keep him on? Why wouldn't you terminate him? Why would you force other people in your sheriff's office to work with this guy? I don't care what the capacity is. He's tasked with enforcing laws, and he took a vulnerable child, put that child at risk, was carrying a firearm while he was drunk, drove while he was drunk. He's endangering countless lives. Who cares if he endangers his own? He endangered the life of a 16-year-old. He endangered the life of every other person that was on the road that night, to include the Candy Ojai deputy. And you kept him on the job? And to the post board? What in the hell? What in the blue blazes were you thinking? But I want to show you something about the post board. We're going to get ready to wrap it up here. I want to show you this post board. This is my problem with the post board in this situation. Oh boy, that's not what I wanted to do. I don't know if you guys can see it here. Jim Yang, chair, peace officer. Jason Bennett, peace officer. Nigel Parate, public member. Pilar Steer, peace officer. 1, 2, 3 people on this complaint investigation committee are peace officers, licensed peace officers in the state of Minnesota. In fact, I am going to screen grab that. And we're going to put this document out. How on earth can the post board hear this case, know that he had a 16-year-old? I don't care if the law says it wasn't illegal for him to have the 16-year-old with him. Where are your ethics? Where are your morality piece board, your board members, the complaint investigation committee? Where are your ethics? Where are your morals? Where are your values? That you did not take that into consideration. You mentioned it, but it's never looked at because it's not against the law. You mentioned the fact that he had his firearm on him. And the best that you can do is a 120-day suspension of his license, 117 of those suspended. So he's got 3 days of suspension and he's censured. And all that goes away if he just remains law-abiding. You want to know why everybody says blue protects blue? It's because of this kind of garbage. That's the garbage that makes people say pigs protect pigs. His friend in Texas told me flat out, you get a DUI as a licensed police officer in the state of Texas, you're done. You're scorched earth. You will never have a law enforcement job in the state of Texas again. Texas got its own problems, folks. But my friend flat out told me, he's seen it over and over and over again. They yank your license. You're done in Texas. You may be able to go off somewhere else and get it, but you're done. I mean, in Minnesota, remember I told you at the beginning of the show, Minnesota is the state that hates cops. Well, when you have the fox guarding the fox, what's going to happen? Who holds the fox accountable? Not the other fox. And on that entire committee, one of them was a member of the public. Mr. Muffley should be sitting in jail right now. Should be sitting in jail. Now, do non-cops get breaks on their sentencing? They do. The difference is cops should be held to a higher standard. He was a cop when he did this. Off duty or not, he was a cop when he did this. An example should have been made. But if they would have made an example of him, if the criminal justice system would have made an example of him, they would have had to fire him. Because how do you keep a cop on duty or put him out on paid administrative leave when he's sitting in the jail of the county, the next county over? This is bullshit. This is why I curse, folks. And nobody's going to care. I'm a little bitter this weekend because one of you knows, I keep doing this, and I'm not doing it for me, but I get so much hate communication from people. Whether I'm calling out Royce White for his, he's not a cop, folks. I call out Royce White for his asinine behavior. I get so much hate when I call out these people in public. But boy, I'll tell you what, you post a story like this about a crooked cop, about a dirty cop, and how he's being protected by other dirty and crooked cops, and the people come at me. And I'm to the point now where, it would be worth it if my videos were getting 20, 30, 40,000 views or more. But I'm really starting to wonder if it's worth it. And please, to my faithful audience, please understand this is not directed at you. But the hate and the amount of vitriolic shit that I take from the boot sucking, boot licking, back the blue at all cost types. Screw you. You statist, simping pieces of crap. Who then have the audacity, whoa, it doesn't matter what you say, nobody pays attention to you anyway. And you know what happens? I love every single one of you that actually pays attention to me. You know that. So please do not hear me complaining about you guys. But you know what I think? Outside of you who actually give a shit, nobody cares. Nobody cares. They just want to stay in their complacency. They want to stay. They don't care what the cops do to protect themselves from accountability as long as they don't have to worry about not being secure. They don't care about liberty. They don't care about justice. They don't care about freedom. And it's easier to hate me for calling them out, and it's easier for them to mock me for not getting any views on my videos, because that's what I hear all the time. Hey, nobody watch your shit anyway. And then they'll say things to me like, well, name one thing that you've done. Name one thing you've accomplished. The reason nothing's getting accomplished is because people just refuse to wake up. So when I ask you guys to share this, I'm being selfish. I want to see something happen. I do. I want Muffley to be fired. I want his life ruined. Because if this were a person who was a private daycare operator and they were driving around with a minor in their vehicle and they were drunk and they had a gun, their daycare license would be yanked. People would stop doing business with them. But we don't get a choice about not doing business with corrupt law enforcement agencies and corrupt cops because they have all the power. They have all the power. So yeah, I want Muffley taken down. And I want Brian Cruz, the sheriff of Meeker County, to get so much crap that he has to make a public statement. That's what I want. Because the minute we can start affecting that kind of change, then maybe we can start making a difference in the corruption in the rest of the system. But we're never going to be able to do a damn thing about all of the wicked cotton-picking politicians out there and all the other people in public service if we can't do anything about some chomo-looking greaseball. So everybody do what Chad did. Go to Meeker County Sheriff's Office. Find them on Facebook. Find them anywhere else. Find the sheriff's email and inundate him. Actually, Chad, put the email address in the comments quick if you could before I end this. And I will try and get that email address and the link to the Facebook page put up in the description of the video. Email, don't even say anything other than, hey, Sheriff Cruz, why would you keep this guy on the payroll? Why wouldn't you publicly state you will not tolerate this kind of behavior, and anyone who in your law enforcement agency that gets caught behaving this way will be immediately terminated? And then help me make this go viral. And for me, viral is anything over 500 views. So I'm sorry to sound a little bitter, but it's like the fight is like, it's every day. It's every day. But I'm going to keep looking into Mr. Muffley and find out what we can find out about him in Texas if there's any way to do that. So, folks, enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Like this, comment on it, come back and comment after the fact. Share it with anyone. I don't care where they are in the United States. I'll talk about anybody. You send me any story from anywhere in the United States, and if I can back up any of it, you know I will cover it. So help me spread this story far and wide across the entire country, across our republic, what's left of it. Let's bring some heat on the Meeker County Sheriff's Office, and let's get Mr. Muffley fired, or make him so miserable that he just doesn't want to do the job anymore. Yeah, I know that sounds evil to a lot of you, but that's the way he should feel. Any self-respecting person who says that they want to be a good cop should be hanging their head in shame right now and say, I'm never going to do this job again. I never want to do this. Man, I know detention deputies who got DUIs in Minnesota. I know two, and one that was protected from driving in Olmsted County. I'm gonna put his name out there. John Bondi, Olmsted County deputy. In his story, I put his story up before. Deputy John Bondi gets drunk during training, acts like an ass during training, gets summoned to Chief Deputy Brian Howard's office the very next day, shows up drunk to that meeting, and gets driven home after showing up drunk. Olmsted County, drove Deputy John Bondi home drunk instead of charging him with the DUI. But in that same office, 2 other deputies got DUIs, and Sheriff Kevin Torgerson, instead of making examples of Bondi, tried to get these guys, make examples out of these guys. Why Bondi was special, I don't know. Don't know. But he did try to make examples, and these were detention deputies. They didn't even hold post certification. They were sworn deputies inside the detention center, but they didn't even have to go through all of this other rigmarole. And he still tried to get rid of them. Tried to make their lives so uncomfortable that they wouldn't want to work there anymore. And they were apologetic. This guy's a post-certified licensed peace officer in the state of Minnesota, keeps his job. And doesn't do any jail time. Just slap on the wrist. That shit's got to end. It's sickening. And that's why I talk so much about rules for thee, but not for me. Because that's how they live. That's how they live. They don't have to obey the rules they enforce. And that's why I echo my friend Monica's sentiment here that she picked up for me and put on this board that she handmade for me a little over a year ago. Once again, folks, if you have not joined the channel as a channel member, do so. I could really use the support. I am picking up members slowly, but I could really use some more Act Localist. And if you're interested at all to pick up a show producer credit, I would love for somebody to pick it up at that level. Please share this out. Let's make this go viral. Let's bring heat on Meeker County Sheriff Cruz, and let's get this chumly-looking Muffley out of his job. Let's get him out of law enforcement for the rest of his life. That's what he deserves. So until next time, my friends, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And sic semper. These hypocritical tyrants. Sic semper tyrannis.
Go for liftoff in T-30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are go. All systems are go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at